Good morning, Abundant Life Church. This is Pastor Chris, and today we're going to be looking at Romans chapter 9, verses 24 down through 29. I want to start by talking about some famous movie roles. Let's begin with Star Wars. Han Solo, everybody knows, was played by Harrison Ford. But did you know who turned that role down? It was turned down by Al Pacino. It was turned down by Burt Reynolds. I just can't picture Burt Reynolds as Han Solo. The role of James Bond was originally turned down by Sean Connery. I'm not Sean Connery, I'm sorry, Cary Grant. It's right there in my notes, Cary Grant. It was eventually taken by Sean Connery. After he left, they tried to get Burt Reynolds. Can't see Burt Reynolds as James Bond. Forrest Gump, that was turned back down by John Travolta. The role of Indiana Jones was specifically written with one actor in mind who had to turn it down because he was too busy shooting his TV show Magnum PI. That's right, Indiana Jones was supposed to be Tom Selleck. Casablanca was originally cast with Burt Reynolds. No, just kidding. It was originally cast with Ronald Reagan in mind. He turned it down, so they got Humphrey Bogart. The role of Scarlett O'Hara, I think we all know, is Vivian Leigh who played that. Originally, it was supposed to be, that's right, Burt Reynolds. These were the first choices, these actors. We can't imagine them in those roles now. And what we see when we watch these movies were the second choices. At this point in the book of Romans, Paul has been building up the case that the way to God is open to everybody, Jew or Gentile. Now that's great, but that wasn't always the case. In the old days, the Jews were the chosen people, but since they rejected Jesus, they rejected the Messiah that God sent to them. Now us Gentiles are in. So we're God's second choice because his first choice said no. How are we supposed to feel about the fact that he preferred somebody else but had to settle for us? Are we God's second choice? And if we are, how do we cope with that? If God just let us in because the Jews rejected Jesus, then doesn't that make us God's, backup plan? In the Old Testament, we weren't God's chosen people. Yeah, the Jews were. They were the ones who had the covenants with God. So they were the only ones around who were in right standing with the Lord. Part of the reason they were in right standing was because they followed God when nobody else did. Okay, but that was because God chose to make covenant with just them. He chose them to follow him. He gave them his law, his commandments. And that means if he didn't choose them, I'm sorry, that means if he chose them, he didn't choose us. But even if God didn't choose us first, once the Jews turned God down by turning down Jesus, okay, so now we can get to God. We're no longer on the outside looking in. We can get there, even if we weren't his first choice, his preference. But again, if we're in because God's first choice turned him down, don't you feel like that sort of makes us second class people? It's great he gave us Gentiles a chance, but if he only did it because the Jews said no, how does that not make us second class people? How are you supposed to feel about this? When I was in high school, we didn't have a prom. I went to a private Christian high school, and we had like a banquet that you went to. The same deal as the prom, just no dancing because Jesus hates dancing, apparently. Anyways, the big thing was always who are you going to ask to the banquet? Well, the prettiest girl in school wasn't getting asked by anybody. Now, I knew her pretty well, and we were friends. I mean, not close friends, but she was a very nice girl, very friendly, and I thought this is ridiculous. Nobody's asking her because they're all scared of her. I was scared of her too, but I thought, hey, this might be my in. So I gave her a phone call and I asked her, said, hey, you want to go to the banquet with me? She said, well, okay, but that's not a good start right there. Okay, but she said, I'm waiting for this other guy to ask me. I'll tell you what, if he doesn't ask me, then I'll go with you. Okay. Now, the way things turned out, he did ask her. She went with him. I went with somebody else. I wish looking back on that, I had had the nerve when she had said, if he doesn't ask me, then I'll go with you, to say, okay, but what I need to know is if you have access to that lake, I need you to jump in. I really didn't appreciate being considered second class. So, how should we feel, us Gentiles, about the realization that we're only God's second choice? Maybe we have to face up to facts. Maybe we have to face up to the idea that God didn't create all people equally. Apparently, the Jews are better than us, and He just preferred them over us, and that's why they were His first choice. But if that's true, does it mean we start ranking people according to how they were born? We start ranking people by their race? Now, you say, well, that's how we've done it for thousands of years. True. But is that a good way to do it? Has it ever led to any problems? Does God really use the standards of racism? Come on. It isn't true that the Jews were better. Or if it isn't true that they were better, then there has to be another answer as to why God chose them first. Perhaps we shouldn't be questioning this at all. Shouldn't we be grateful that we're in? Yeah. But even if we are grateful that we're in, this does raise that question. Why didn't God let us in before? Now, we're thankful that He gave us Jesus and all that, but what was wrong with us? That God wouldn't let us in from the very beginning. You probably want to know the answer to that. So you should probably tune in next time. Until then, have a great day.